Before we start, I want to welcome and thank Bryn. Bryn is back from maternity leave, and Howie is sleeping, so she'll stay muted in case Howie wakes up. But meanwhile, she's providing the technical assistance for this. And I will be doing this along with Linda Freedman, who's next to me on my screen, but I don't know where she is on your screen. Linda is co-specialist for voting election laws and has been doing this even longer than I have. So we are a veteran team, let's put it that way. And I think for now, if Bryn can help me share my screen, I will put up the slides and Linda can get started. And Bryn, if you'll tell me when this is working right.
Yes, it's working.
Yep.
You can see just the one screen?
Just click from beginning.
It's there. It's good.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so Linda is going to start with this, just a little bit of introduction here. So take it away, Linda.
Okay. Well, as Nancy described, we are specialists in elections and voting, and I'm one of the oldest members of the LAC and the predecessor to the LAC. We are all specialists in different areas of legislation. There are 24 of us, and we are the major force behind the League's advocacy work in Massachusetts. And there are many, many bills going through our legislature. The specialists select and monitor over 150 bills in our areas of specialty that are compatible with League positions. We do research on them and present our research at the meetings of the LAC, and then they are discussed and voted on. And at that point, the LAC decides whether to support, oppose, or simply to not take any action on each bill. We then can write testimony for the bills. And the specialists suggest advocacy that the local leagues can take and to organize educational events. You can see all of these bills on the LWVMA website under advocacy/league supported legislation and the appropriate year, which is 2021. Prior ones are on there too. I'd like to also add a couple words about the coalitions that we work with because they are so helpful. Nancy and I and also our executive director, Patty, we work with the Election Modernization Coalition, and this is a wonderful organization of people from other voting rights groups, the Common Cause, ACLU, Mass Votes, Voter Table, Mass Perg, and others. And it's just a wonderful way for us to be able to work and advocate for the appropriate bills. Nancy? You're unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Just want to say that we're going to present 4 different bills, and we will take questions on them after all 4 have been presented. You can jot your question down in the chat if you're afraid you'll forget it, or we'll do a raise hands at the end of this. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking so that we don't get any background noise in the program. And now, why can't I get my thing to advance, Bryn? Why can't I get my slide to advance?
If you used your right arrow, that should work.
Yeah, I know, but it isn't. What's your second thought?
Click. Get the link to the presentation.
I can't even get to the, maybe screen sharing? No. Stop. Just new
Stop.
share? No.
Space bar?
Space bar? No. Any other? Stop share and start again?
Yeah.
Technical difficulties. Sorry about this. Share screen. Are you seeing it?
Yep. Play from, if you're trying to go to
okay.
There you go.
Can you see the Votes Act now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're also seeing the other slides, just ignore them.
Okay.
We're gonna just do this. So the Votes Act is the only one of our bills that's been reported out of joint committee. The Senate version of it was reported out. The House and Senate version is still in committee. It doesn't matter because the House and Senate versions are identical. The committee, in whatever wisdom it has, decided to go with just the Senate version. Probably, and that's why it was reported to the Senate. And it maybe have something to do with the power of Cindy Cream, the senator who sponsored this bill. So this is our key voting bill that we are pushing this session. This is an omnibus bill. It will make most of the election reforms that were passed in July 2020 during the pandemic. It will make those permanent, including expanded in-person early voting, expanded access to voting by mail. Voters will be able to ask that mail ballots be sent to them permanently until they cancel without an application. It provides for drop boxes, for an online portal for mail ballot applications, and it continues the practices of the election official's office that makes the process more efficient, including processing mail ballots as they come in rather than on election day. So that's one key chunk of this bill, which is to make everything that we did that people loved permanent. Right now, those reforms are temporary. The legislature keeps extending the cutoff date. It's now December 15th to cover like the municipal elections this fall. They need to pass this so they don't have to keep doing that. Now, in addition to those pandemic reforms, this bill will provide for same-day voter registration. We have been trying to get that through for a decade. We are now calling it, you may remember we used to call it election day registration. We now call it same day because we want it to apply to early voting as well, in-person early voting days, as well as to election day itself. The bill also has a requirement that corrections officials facilitate voting for people who are being held who are eligible to vote. It provides for risk limiting post-election audits. That's a more sophisticated kind of audit, every 2 years instead of every 4. It adjusts the automatic voter registration practice to comply with the original law. When we passed automatic voter registration 4 years ago, I think it was 4, maybe 2, people were not asked if they wanted to opt out right at the registry of motor vehicles, because when they've been standing in line for hours, they tend to want to just get out of there and not fool with it. Supposedly, they are given the chance to opt out of voter registration on a card sent by the clerk after they have been registered. But currently, the registry and Galvin's office is saying that they can, people can opt out right at the registry. So this would make that not the case. And finally, this bill would require the Secretary of State to join the Electronic Registration Information Center called ERIC. by next June. In 2018, we passed a law requiring Massachusetts to join ERIC, but the secretary has not done so. This would force him to do so. ERIC would go a long way to clean. It's a central database that I think something like 30 states already belong to, and it is a clear and simple way to clean up voting rolls because it compares voter registrations to addresses when people move, change their addresses, register somewhere else. So those are the provisions of the law. The bill is currently in the Senate Ways and Means Committee. The election coalition that Linda mentioned met with the chair of that committee a couple of weeks ago. He indicates that the committee hopes to get this bill out early this fall. It would come out and be voted on in the Senate first and then go to the House. We are pretty sure the Senate will pass same-day voter registration because they have done so in the last 3 sessions. The question is whether the House will keep that provision. They have not done so in the last 3 sessions. So they will, once it passes the Senate, we will make a big push to get the House to keep same-day voter registration. We're assuming it'll be in there. We don't know the form the bill will take when it comes out of Senate Ways and Means. All of these provisions may or may not be in it. They all stayed in it when it came out of committee, which is a good thing. But we'll have to see what the Ways and Means Committee reports out when it does. We'll be looking to make sure, for example, that the corrections voting provision would be in there, or the risk limiting audits. So that is where it stands. We'll be waiting, holding our breath this fall to see what comes out of the committee. Put on your calendar, there's a lobby day. The Election Coalition is holding a lobby day on Wednesday, October 6th from noon to 1:30 to push this bill. We don't know if it will be out of Ways and Means by then or coming out of Ways and Means by then, but we'll be doing that. Also, the League is having its Stay on the Hill lobby day sometime in mid to late October. Until we get the speaker we want lined up, we don't have an exact date yet, but keep an eye on your action newsletter. We'll have that in there. And we'll also be sending out information, obviously, on Day of the Hill when we do that. So that is where the Votes Act stands. Holding our breath to see what comes out of Ways and Means, and then we'll be pushing. We'd love to get the governor to sign this, get it passed before the legislature takes its Thanksgiving recess till the end of the year, and have it signed by the governor so that it's in place when the election reforms that have been extended expire on December 15th. So that's mine. Linda, you're up next on the, let me see if I can get your bill. Yay. Unmute. Linda, unmute.
I'm going to do a sampler. It says unmute yourself. The people forget to unmute themselves. Anyway, getting on to this bill, this may seem like a no-brainer, but S679 and 479 are needed to help parents running for public office. Currently, they cannot deduct the childcare expenses incurred while they are campaigning. And this is, this is particularly bad for people with young children who want to run for office. Currently, the Office of Campaign Finance has excluded this expenditure. So childcare is done at the candidate's expense, either paid babysitters or maybe friends, family, neighbors, whatever. It's interesting also that federal law allows candidates for Senate and House to deduct these, as well as there are 13 states that allow this expense. And Connecticut just became the 13th state to do this. So I understand it was necessary last year to have a special commission to study this issue, and during the last legislative session, and they made a report on December of 2020. The Special Commission on Family Care and Child Care urged the passage of legislation to allow the campaign expenses for child care. And the report said that if the legislature employs their recommendations, they will make great strides towards a more diverse candidates pool in upcoming elections. The League supports, of course, participation by the widest number of citizens, and we welcome a change like this. And also, I think the Office of Campaign Expenses is now agreed. They had a representative on the commission who believes that they can separate out personal from legitimate campaign expenses for child care, and that's no longer an addition. And we're hoping that this year that we can get this adopted and help the parents of young children who are candidates for office, as well as encouraging more of them to run. And it is an appropriate bill for the League.
Brent, I'm freezing again. Shoot, why is this freezing again?
Click on the side panel to your 4, click on that.
Yeah, okay. All right. The next bill we're supporting is nicknamed the FARE Act. It would make buses, subways, trolley services fare-free on the days of statewide primaries and elections for the state's 15 regional transit authorities, but not for commuter rail. People keep saying, well, there are just tons and tons of elections and that will be really expensive. But this act applies only to statewide primaries and elections. That means 2 days every 2 years. So we're not asking for a whole lot here. The reason for this bill is in the 2020 election, you'll notice the suburban white high-end communities voter turnout reached and exceeded 85%. But in the urban, diverse, lower income communities, voter turnout was more than 30% lower. Part of that, not all of it, obviously, but part may be that only 9% of white households do not own a car. But for Black households, 25% don't own a car. Hispanic households is 27%. Many of these people depend on public transportation to get to their jobs, to get to school, to go grocery shopping, and to get to the polls. I don't think this bill would make a huge, huge turnout difference, but it would make it clear that the state of Massachusetts thinks the people that take mass transit are important and their votes are important. So the bill provides free service in, is it 15 or 16? Well, we'll see. Mass transit districts statewide. This is not a big city bill. This little map shows all the transit districts around the state. You can see from the various colors that there are a whole bunch of them. They cover the entire state. Their bus routes running all up and down the Berkshires and the Taunton, Attleboro area and out on the Cape. This bill would apply to all of those. Interestingly, this bill is in the Joint Committee on Transportation. All of our other bills are in the Joint Committee on Election Laws. At the hearing on this bill, there was a ton of testimony in favor of some other bills at that hearing to make public transportation free. I fear this bill might get lost in that big move to make transportation free or much lower cost, but we will at least make the point that the votes of people who take the bus to work are important, and we'd like to make it easier for them to vote. All right, Linda.
Okay, we're talking about voting by eligible incarcerated people, H836 and S474. This may seem a little redundant because most of this was in the Votes Act that Nancy described. However, there's no guarantee that the Votes Act will not be changed and that the provisions in it could be changed, including the ones for incarcerated people. Nothing is written in stone at this point. We obviously hope there will not be changes, but given the legislative process, we know there can be amendments and changes. So this is a good backup measure in case we need it. And there is one or more additional provisions in this bill that are not included in the Votes Act. I'm referring to a proposal for a single day of in-person early voting in the various facilities in the most populous counties. I don't think that was in the Votes Act, but this bill provides for enabling the houses of corrections and jails to take appropriate action to allow and encourage incarcerated people to register and vote. And this is a population that rarely votes. One study in a local jail had approximately 4% of the inmates voting. And we know that in Massachusetts, most of them could have voted. The only people that are exempted from voting are incarcerated felons. So the people, the pretrial detainees who were in jail because they couldn't make bail or some other condition that was imposed, as well as the many who were serving time for misdemeanors. They are all eligible to vote, but most of them are not aware of it. So this is a way of getting information to them and helping them to register and vote. And it particularly requires the facilities to appoint an officer who will be in charge of that and to publicize the information and to make sure that they can actually apply for their the absentee ballots, and that the absentee ballots will be posted to their appropriate voting offices. So the other thing is that it would allow the felons, upon completing their sentence, to register and vote. They are not usually aware that their voting rights have been restored, and they should be informed of this and the steps that they can take to register before they leave the facility. In other words, this will help all inmates in Massachusetts except the convicted felons who are serving time. It also requires that the data on this be accurately collected, and that the Office of the Secretary of State and local officials to assist with the incarcerated population to register and vote.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna kill the screen sharing and just very briefly, the other bills that we're following, you can take a look at on our website. All of them except the Votes Act are still in committee. If the bill has had a hearing, our testimony at that hearing will be posted on the website. So you can sort of tell whether there's testimony or not. We'll tell you whether the bill is at a hearing or not. A couple of other bills that we're supporting is a constitutional amendment that would remove the restrictions on absentee voting. It just makes it clear that there's no problem with voting absentee if you want to do it. And then there are a couple of home rule bills that we're supporting that would allow cities and towns to, one would allow them to use ranked choice voting in their local elections if they want to do that. And another one would allow cities and towns to lower the voting age in municipal elections if they choose to do that. Both of those without having to get the legislature's approval to do that. Right now, they have to run that through the legislature, which has never yet approved any of it. We're also opposing some bills to require photo ID to vote and to allow military and overseas ballots to be returned by email. So we're not only supporting bills, we're opposing bills. And now let me call up the chat here and we'll look at some questions here. Marcia, what is the hesitancy by the House to support same-day voter registration? There are people in the House whose districts include major universities and they are not fans of people registering to vote on election day. And that has been the problem.
Also, many of the election officials, particularly local town clerks, don't feel they can spare the manpower for, or the power for the staff to conduct the same day registration, and they feel stressed out and underfunded. Okay.
Jen Muroff asks if Baker has publicly opposed any provisions in the Votes Act. Not that I know of. He hasn't weighed in on things like same-day registration yet. So he is obviously in favor because he keeps signing the extensions of expanding the pandemic requirements. But the other requirements, he, as far as I know, he has not yet expressed an opinion on it. Allison, are drop boxes access part of the Votes Act? Yes, and yes, and yes. It requires towns to have drop boxes for ballots. What do you think we are, Georgia? Will the lobby day on the Hill be in person or virtual? Both the lobby day on October 6th and our day on the Hill later in October are going to be virtual. We're working out details. There'll be like breakout sessions where people can, during those sessions, contact their legislators. We might be able to do breakout sessions where we invite legislators to come, if we could set them up regionally to come and talk to their constituents. We're still working out the details on how to do it, but it will be virtual. So hopefully that will make it a lot easier for people in the western part of the states and people on the Cape to attend. I'm kind of a fan of virtual meetings myself. I think Kathy already answered that. Never mind. I should scroll down all the way first. What has been the hesitancy by the secretary to join Eric so long? I don't know. Give him a call and ask him. See what he says. It's let me put it this way: if this provision doesn't stay in the Votes Act, I think Common Cause is getting ready to sue him to do this because the law says he has to. So, other questions? You can do raise hand if instead of type in, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. Raise your hand, let us know.
Do they know that they can go to reactions and use the hand at the bottom, the yellow hand at the bottom of that? That's another way of getting our attention.
Yeah, that's how to raise your hand. Sorry.
Okay, but the people who are not showing their video need this to ask a question if they don't want to.
Yeah, the hand still comes up if you're not showing your video.
Okay.
We can still see you. Any other questions? So we're all going to lobby for the Votes Act. We're going to hope this gets passed. And in more than just the pandemic reforms, there is no question the pandemic reforms are going to get passed. That people like mail voting. That genie is not going to go back in the bottle. People wanted. I don't know if in your town, but I know in my town, people thought that the applications were going to be mailed to them for the spring election, town election. They didn't realize they had to apply for a mail ballot. So people want that. And I think there's little if any question, that will be passed. The question is whether those other provisions will stay in there. So Marcia, you have your hand up.
Yes.
I might add,
so when I last spoke with Senator Cream and we did a League Presents, and I see my buddy Susan, who did one with me way back when on ranked choice voting. Cindy talked about that there are bills somewhere in process that would actually suppress the vote. She didn't really know too much about it, but are we aware of what they are? Because we want to make sure that those don't happen. So is that on anybody's radar screen?
There are what? You fuzzed there just a little bit of there. She said there what in process?
There are bills somewhere in the legislative process that would ultimately suppress the vote. She didn't have any specifics, but are you folks aware of any?
The ones I know about it, there are 2 or 3 show photo ID to vote bills. They have been introduced every session since I've been doing this. They never pass. Okay. They never come out of committee. This legislature is not going to do voter suppression. All right. They aren't going to do. They may not do everything we want them to do, but they aren't going to do voter suppression. Okay. This is not Georgia or Texas. It's really nice to be working in Massachusetts. You know, to be working on positive things rather than fighting huge battles. And I see, okay, Karen Price has just posted, there is a ballot question in process for voter ID. There are actually 4. The Republicans have submitted 3 petitions and someone else has submitted a 4th petition to put a question on the 2022 ballot to require photo ID to vote. That is the current status of that is the Attorney General is evaluating all the ballot petitions, question petitions.
Going out with her?
She will make a decision, announce a decision, we think on September 1st. The Election Modernization Coalition has submitted a strong memo to the Attorney General's office opposing this as unconstitutional and against our voting laws. There was a similar bill, petition several years ago that she ruled unconstitutional, but it required you to pay for a voter ID. So it got into the whole poll tax issue. We are hoping that the Attorney General turns this down. If she does not, if she allows these to go ahead, then the proponents of this will have to decide which of the 4 petitions they want to pursue, and will have to collect 80,000 plus signatures on it. We're not going to help with that signature effort. We're going to oppose it. My favorite line on this, on photo ID to vote, the only kind of election fraud it addresses is in-person at the poll voter impersonation, a person coming in saying there's somebody else. The reason people who try to steal elections don't use this is the same reason the counterfeiters don't make pennies. It is not worth the effort. It is not the way to steal an election. That's why there are virtually no instances of in-person voter fraud, and that is the only kind of voter fraud that a photo ID would address. So it's really no point at all. Kathy, Michael, you have your hand up.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question about the ERIC system that Galvin does not want to join for the last 2 years. My question is about security, and only because I remember being at the annual Massachusetts League meeting 2 years ago, when the last time we met for real, in real, and you had somebody there from his office, I think, who spoke and said that our system in Massachusetts, our election system, is so secure and we don't ever have to worry about it being hacked because we're not tied into the major system anywhere else. It stands on its own. So I just want to ask about that statement.
This is not necessarily a security thing. This is a clean up the rolls, is what Eric said.
I realize that would be the benefit. Yeah.
That would be the benefit.
I'm all for it. I was just wondering if there's some kind of security thing you guys could look into. Like,
no, actually, it's considered, it makes the system more secure. Is everything okay. The things that I've read about it, it makes it more secure, not less.
All right, I'm glad to hear that. Just asking.
There's a question on the financial implications of the Votes Act. If this is an unfunded mandate, there is money. Secretary Galvin is sitting on something like $50 million in Help America Votes Act money that can be used for equipment to process. It can be used for equipment and services. It can't be used to pay people. But if we need more, the things that open the envelopes quickly, I forget what they're called, but they're like envelope slitters that work much more fast and efficiently. If we need that, there's money to pay for that. It hasn't been spent. There's also election money from the COVID relief bills that hasn't been spent. And I don't think it has the restrictions of the Help America Vote Act money. The expense would be in mailing out mail ballots. And yes, the bill calls for those applications and the ballots themselves to be postage paid. So yes, there is an expense. I like to think it's worth it, to get more people voting and to get people voting safer. Maybe if you do vote by mail, it cuts down on the need for protective equipment and supplies. But there is money. There was money in the emergency relief bills that hasn't been spent, and there's Help America Vote Act money. So, Kathy, again, or did you just not unraise your hand?
So sorry, I'm on the phone. I didn't notice. So sorry.
Anybody else questions? You people are too easy.
I would just like to say a word about why we oppose the bills for not just email voting. That already went out during the Patrick administration. It was approved to have voting by electronic means during the Patrick years. And of course, we opposed it at the time, but the bills that would, it was part of a big Veterans Day bill, and it was sneaked past members of the legislature. I remember talking to my representative about it, and she was astonished because she thought she was voting against it, and it was just sort of clandestinely added to that. But what we do oppose currently is voting by phone. And I want to say one word, that overseas military and contractors can have expedited mail delivery of their completed ballots, as well as the ballots can be sent to them electronically. So those expedited delivery of the ballots, almost all of them reach their various precincts before the election, and there's time to count them with the other votes that are coming in. So that's not an issue, but somehow people in the legislature think that they need to do more. And all of these things can be compromised electronically. I mean, we know so much about how easy it is to sabotage computers and to alter votes, and we don't need additional electronic means, whether it's by phone or the coconut wireless or whatever. We don't need those things because they can compromise close elections. And there are people out there who would be eager to change votes or to delete them. And we are also in great danger of having our electronic poll book sabotaged. But I always point out that same-day registration would enable somebody whose name information had been altered or who was even dropped from the poll books to come to the polling place, as long as it's before 5 o'clock on the voting day, and re-register and get them back in as a legitimate voter. Electronic poll books are vulnerable, but same-day registration could go a long way to curb this problem.
Okay, there are a couple more questions in the chat. Would funding help town clerks with same-day registration? They would have to be funded to do this. You know, somewhere, Galvin's office funds the town clerks to do what they need to do. Just same-day registration is not a huge influx of people registering to vote on that day. It mostly what same-day registration covers, and I think in Vermont, they found it was like 75% of the people using same-day voter registration were actually fixing errors in their registration. They showed up to vote and the address was wrong or their middle initial was wrong. And instead of having to vote a provisional ballot, they could just re-register with the correct information. So we're not talking a huge influx in every state, every town in the state if we implement same-day voter registration. Then another question, are there provisions in federal government to secure election officials from threats and harassment? I don't know. I vaguely remember hearing that someone had proposed a bill, but you know, there are already laws on the books about harassing people and threatening people. We don't need new laws. We need to enforce and stop this action where it's being done. Carol Young Kleinfield, unmute and question.
With the redistricting process and new maps coming out, will you both be involved in some way on commenting on that, or does that come under the aegis of other specialists in the Massachusetts League?
That's not a specialist thing because it's not legislation per se, but there is it was Judy Zonbrecker who took off and moved to Minnesota. But someone, Elizabeth may know, someone is following redistricting and will be reporting on the maps that come out. It's going to be very tight. The time the maps come out and the time the legislature votes on the maps and Baker signs them and all that, it's going to be a very compressed period in the fall. It'll be a tense time. But and there's a re-precincting bill that was going to allow precincts to be drawn first and then state legislative districts drawn from them. That re-precinct bill passed both the House and the Senate, but it was different versions. It's currently in conference committee. And so it has to come, a final version has to come out of the conference committee and be voted again on by both houses. They can't amend it when it comes out of the conference committee. It's either an up or down vote. But they haven't even done that yet. I mean, it's going to be a very compressed time this fall.
There will also be hearings by the redistricting.
I think they finished all the hearings, Linda. I think they've done all the hearings.
Yeah, but in each district, yeah.
I think they've already done them. Oh. It's over. They finished that.
Okay.
So, anybody else? Yes, Carol.
Will they be also having hearings after the maps are issued? Do you know?
I would almost bet that they will, but I don't know.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't imagine that they don't have to have some kind of public comment period.
Right.
Whether it's a hearing or a public comment period or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
There's on the legislature's website, malegislature.gov, you can get to the, or actually go to our website and type in redistricting or go to Fair Maps on the homepage and click on that, and it gets you to all the information on redistricting that we have, including the schedule for things and the website for the redistricting committee. So you can follow that.
Good.
Anybody else? Well, at least we don't have to worry about laws to prevent people from giving somebody water in line. Florence. Florence, unmute.
I have a question about the bill about giving incarcerated people, making sure that they vote. It's also, I listened yesterday to the criminal justice specialists, and they have that in a bill. How does that work? Are both bills taken up? Does it matter? I mean, what you support both things? Why?
Well, yeah, we're following the bill that Linda outlined. We're following that instead of the criminal justice. They're watching it, but we're the ones that have done the testimony on that one because it's a voting bill. A lot of the people that the criminal justice people work with are also following that bill. And as Linda said, there's a freestanding version that she outlined, and then there's a provision that would do much of the same thing in the Votes Act. I don't know whether that provision will stay in the Votes Act or not. That's why we're supporting the freestanding version as well, just to make sure that we do. But just to be clear, that bill provides for people who are being held, who are eligible to vote absentee in their hometowns. When they had a hearing on that bill, there were a lot of questions from legislators whether people would be voting in the town where the jail or prison is located. They will not. They will be voting in their home, at their home addresses. So again, that was a question that kept coming up, and I just want to clear that up.
Thank you, Nancy.
Anything else? All right. So come to the lobby day on the 6th. Come to Day on the Hill later on in October. We're going to be doing 4 bills: a climate change bill, the Votes Act, the Common Start bill, which is for early education and childcare, is very important, and Medicare for all. So those are the bills we'll be focusing on at Day on the Hill. So there you have a little preview. Nobody has anything else? Last call? Oh, what are we doing? There's another question here. What are we doing to support the National Voter Rights Initiative? You know, our legislators are pretty much on board with that. So if you want to send them a note and thank them, most of that effort is being done at the National League level. LWVUS is pushing doing that. I saw on Rachel Maddow last night, she had the National League was participating in a march in Washington yesterday or the day before, whichever day it was, but she had clips on them, and there were people in their league t-shirts right out in front, and she was actually mentioned that the League of Women Voters was right up front in this. Yes, Lana, we're going to do a climate change bill on Day on the Hill, because you wouldn't let us not do a climate change bill on Day on the Hill.
That's right. Well, it's important for sure.
Did I not mention that?
I don't think so.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I was mentally going down the list and I must have missed that. Anything else, Marcia? Are you raising your hand, Marcia, or clapping?
Well, thank you, Nancy and Linda.
Well, these are important bills, and like I say, it's nice to be working on election legislation in Massachusetts, because it would be hell in a lot of other states. So
it sure would.
So if you're talking to your legislators, thank them for this, for especially if they're co-sponsoring the Votes Act, and you can find that on the website. And let's get this done. Stop fooling around with this pandemic bills. I have nothing else. Seeing none, I'm just going to thank all of you for participating this afternoon. Oh, I do have one more thing. Linda and I do a periodic email update, and if you'd like to be added to that list, send me an email at nbrumback@lwvma.org, and I'll add you to the list. It comes out when there's something to report. It's not a regular thing.
This is an excellent way to communicate with us too. You can this email report that Nancy prepares is very up to date.
All right. On that note, stay tuned September 1st to see if the voter ID ballot questions make it to the ballot. Cross your fingers. And we will see you at Day on the Hill.
Bye,
Bye,
thank
all.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.